Good evening. Call to order to this City Council meeting, Monday, November 1st, 2021. We'll start off with the invocation and pledge by Councilmember Duckworth.
Thank you. Dear Lord, we just thank you for the opportunity to be here together, for the freedoms that allow us to do so. Lord, thank you for the various weather you've given us in the changing of seasons as we live in a special area and are able to enjoy your blessings. Dear Lord, as we work together as a city, community, state, nation, and recognize that we have differences, some real, some minor, some major, just ask us to be able to work together in a spirit of fellowship, that we can solve answers for the good of all. Just ask us to do things for the betterment of the community of Clemson. In your son's name we pray.
Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, John. We appreciate it. Now I'll turn over to the oath of office. Beverly is going to lead this, and I believe Judge Munn is also going to be participating, or are you just going to be in the back? Okay. All right, Beverly, you're on.
Do we just? You did. You made a remove. I do solemnly swear that I am duly qualified according to the Constitution of this state to exercise the duties of the office to which I have been appointed, and that I will, to the best of my ability, discharge those duties and will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of this state and of the United States. I pledge to uphold the integrity and independence of the judiciary. I pledge in the discharge of my duties to treat all persons who enter the courtroom with civility, fairness, and respect. I pledge to listen courteously, sit impartially, act promptly, and rule after careful and considerate deliberation. I pledge to seek justice and justice alone. So help me God.
Congratulations. If you have your family here too, right? Would you like, we'll get out of the way. We know who the important people are, so we'll get out of the way. Would you like to take a picture up here and that way? Okay. We'll get, unless you want us in the background.
You're good. Yeah,
Okay.
you can stay.
Turn around. Come on up. That's your family.
Oh, wait.
Oh, there you go. Beverly's got us under control. Blue.
Yeah, it's okay. Probably have my eyes closed.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Are
we staying back?
We'll stand behind
Sure you
you.
want us in the picture?
We'll stand behind you.
We are not nearly that cute.
Yeah, we'll keep our masks on. We'll look better that way.
All right, we'll keep it.
Back row spread just a little bit. I'm just heads there. Sorry, slide it up. Hey! You can't tell myself that
Awesome. Glad you're here. Thank you. Have a great evening. Our next item is a proclamation for Small Business Saturday, November 27th of this year. I'll read this, so bear with me, but it's very important. Whereas the government of Clemson, South Carolina celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions that make to our local economy and community. Whereas according to the United States Business Administration, there are 31.7 million small businesses in the United States that represent almost 100% of firms with paid employees, and they're responsible for 65.1% of net new jobs created from 2000 to 2019. Whereas small businesses employ 47.1% of the employees in the private sector in the United States, 88% of U.S. consumers feel a personal commitment to support small businesses in the wake of the pandemic, and 92% of business owners have pivoted the way they do business to stay open during this very difficult time. Whereas 97% of Small Business Saturday shoppers recognize the impact they make shopping small, 85% of them are encouraged. They also encourage their friends and families to do so as well. Whereas 56% of shoppers reported they shopped online with a small business on Small Business Saturday in 2020, and more than 50% of consumers who reported shopping small endorsed a local business on social media or shopped at a local business because of social media recommendation. Whereas Clemson, South Carolina supports our local businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our communities. Whereas advocacy groups as well as public and private organizations across the country have endorsed this Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. Now, therefore, I, Robert Halfaker, Mayor of the City of Clemson, do hereby proclaim November 27th, 2021 as Small Business Saturday in the City of Clemson, and urge the residents of our community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on this Saturday throughout the year. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the great seal of the city to be affixed this first day of November 2021. All right. That pretty much says it all. Very much for small businesses. Absolutely. Definitely support our small businesses. So next we'll go to our public session. Councilmember Smith.
All right. Some place to go shopping after the holidays.
That's right.
Thanksgiving. Public session. This is an opportunity for anyone in the audience, even online, to make a comment or make us aware of anything that you have that you'd like for us to be aware of. You can make those comments. You have 3 minutes to share your concerns publicly. If you want to call in, that number is 653-9886. Follow those instructions. So we want to give you this opportunity to speak now, or I always say, ever hold your peace. But if you'd like to come and make a comment, and if anything that's not on the policy or action agenda already. Any comments? Okay. Well, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Mayor. At this time, I will go ahead and close public session. I don't anticipate that we could probably get more comments at this time.
Thank you very much. And just a reminder, but I'll just say, anytime you want to submit it throughout the weeks, you have the Civic Act, other mechanisms to help the city too. That anytime to submit comments, and if we do, we read them. So, approval of minutes is next, or possible approval of minutes, October 18th of 2021. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes October 18th, 2021.
Second.
Just a second. Fran or Bob?
Frank.
You're fighting over it. Okay. Fran, you got it. Any further comments, discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay. I have to go to opposed. All right, reports and discussion agenda items. Next, we're going to receive a report of the Clemson Area African American Museum. Angela's going to give us a wonderful report since she came on board. So we're excited to hear from you. Thank you for coming. No, you're good. And if you're okay, if you want to take it out.
I can breathe and talk.
There we go.
Good evening, Mayor Halfaker, Andy Blundo, City Council members, and guests. My name is Angela Agard, Executive Director of the Clemson Area African American Museum. I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide a brief update on the progress at CAM.
Identity and purpose is the key for any organization, and especially for the Clemson Area African American Museum. The founders and volunteers did an excellent job in collecting African American memorabilia and sharing the accomplishments of African Americans in general. However, for CAM to stand out and become a tourist destination, there needs to be an intentional focus on the museum's mission and purpose. The Clemson Area African American Museum is the only African American museum in Pickens County, and it needs to tell the rich and vibrant history of African Americans in this region. Therefore, the mission of the Clemson Area African American Museum is to collect, interpret, exhibit, and preserve the history of African Americans in the city of Clemson and upstate South Carolina. There is a special emphasis on collecting books, documents, artifacts, and other cultural objects, preserving them and interpreting them for the public by means of museum exhibitions, educational programs, lectures, public events, and publications. As part of the rebranding and refocusing of the purpose and mission of CAM, a redesign of the museum is taking place. With the assistance of Public Works, we have prepared the museum space for painting. The Clemson Sunrise Rotary Club has volunteered to paint the museum space in the coming weeks, and we are very grateful. CAM's first exhibit will be in the museum's hallway and will focus on the Rosenwald schools in Pickens County. Julius Rosenwald was the president of Sears and Roebuck. He used his wealth and influence to contribute to the establishment of schools in the South for African Americans in partnership with Booker T. Washington and Tuskegee Institute. This exhibit will open sometime this year. I am being assisted by Shelby Henderson from the Bertha Lee Strickland Museum and Nick McKinney from the Lunny Museum on this particular exhibit. The next exhibition will be in the museum space, and it will be about the African American neighborhoods in the city of Clemson: Calhoun, Abel, Cadillac Heights, Vista, and Red Hills. I'm still learning all the different neighborhoods, and I'm combining things, so excuse me if I haven't gotten them all correct. I am still in the process of gathering photos, documents, and artifacts for this exhibition. Content development is ongoing. In the 7 months that I have been here, I have curated an 11-week concert series that began in April and commenced in June. This concert series highlighted dance, music, spoken word, and poetry in our outdoor garden space. This allowed our residents to slowly come back to the museum, to reunite with one another, and to learn more about CAM's new mission. On one of the Sundays, we partnered with Clemson University and Dr. Rhonda Thomas from Call My Name and had a community scanning day. This allowed members of the African American community to bring their precious photos and documents to be electronically scanned. Each participant received a thumb drive with their scanned information on it. 2 weeks ago, we had a very successful Domestic Violence Awareness Month program featuring Sabrina Greenlee, where we partnered with Clemson University's Equity and Inclusion Department, Safe Harbor, It's On Us, and Clemson Police Department. We live streamed the event and recorded the program for later rebroadcasting. Upcoming events, which will be in December, is Kwanzaa. It'll be a 5-day celebration from December 26th through the 30th. I was able to secure a grant from AT&T for $7,500 for our Cooperative Economics Day program during this 5-day celebration. And we will also have featured within the Kwanzaa celebration a gallery show with multimedia artist Ashley Mintz, and it's entitled Images of Self. And during that time, we will have art classes for children and young adults. I am still in the process of preparing the full schedule. I have a sketch of it, so during the month of November, I will be fine-tuning it and sending out save-the-date cards and information on social media about it. It's been a very rewarding and busy 7-month period, and I look forward to the future with our upcoming exhibitions, educational programs. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Questions, comments? I'll make one very quickly. I just went to the most recent event. We appreciate you getting that information out. She has just jumped in the last 7 months. I look at Andy because we've talked about this. We appreciate everything you're doing. You're jumping in head first, literally. And you've had so many events out there. I know many people on City Council as well as the community have come to it, and we appreciate it. So thank you for all you're doing. Turn it over to questions, comments.
My pleasure.
I concur, and she and I work, my office actually helped co-sponsor the Spring Green event, and so that was an awesome event. I think from the university perspective, I think we said we had over 80 people in attendance, and then we had the students
Yes.
who spoke very highly of opportunities, so they want to do more with the community and engage more with CAM, and so that was a really good initiative. So our office actually, well, the Commission on Black Experience, as I told Angela, is wanting to do some work with CAM in regards to Kwanzaa this year, because we also have a Kwanzaa program that we sponsor. And so I'll be working, and our commission will be working with CAM. So she's getting connected to the university as well in terms of making sure that there's outreach there. So appreciate all that you've done.
And thank you so much for your partnering with us on Sabrina Greenlee. It was a great event, and the key thing that was really exciting for me was that we actually got students to come to CAM, and some of them took the cat bus, which was great because we really publicized it, and we said it's okay, we'll have signage to help you get to the museum. So that's one of the things I will also be working on, having more signage for the museum, because a lot of people get confused once they get up the hill. They don't know what's happening. So we have to work on that. Anything else?
No, I thought it was great, and I'll follow up. I offered Robert to get her connected to Tri-County as well.
What are the dates of the two things you mentioned, the Rosenwald schools and the neighborhoods? Did you have dates for those?
For the exhibit, I'm still working on it, so I don't have a concrete date yet. When the exhibit is up, I will make sure that it gets publicized properly. It's one of those things that, since I'm partnering with the directors of two of the other museums in Seneca, I'm working with their schedule and our schedule. So,
No, I just thought maybe I missed it.
yeah, no. The only date I gave was for Kwanzaa, December 26th through the 30th.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy, Angela. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight. Our next item will be discussing ordinance. Andy, you get to lead this, to amend City Code Section 1310, excessive noise, declared nuisance, and prohibited to include non-emergency use of compression brakes.
We received a citizen request to look into this issue over the summer, and Mayor Halfacre asked me to look into it, and then I immediately turned around and asked Mary to look into it. And Mary found out the request was to have a sign put in the bridge over here coming in from Oconee County. You need to have something to enforce if you have a sign in place. So she came up with this draft ordinance, and it is prohibits the non-emergency use of a compression brake. So if it was still slippery conditions, or you could do that. But basically this allows us to put a sign on it and maybe potentially reduce nuisance noise, especially if there's going to be more retail there by the lake here in the near future. So this draft is here for your discussion.
Question, comments for Andy, Mary, myself?
Have we had trouble with this?
That was my question.
I mean, I guess one, we had trouble with it. Two, I think there's a lot of vehicles that are louder and louder. And I just spent a little fun time looking at decibel levels. You can find a lot of different answers, but there's a lot of things louder. And enforcement, I guess I'd ask Chief on the enforcement side of it. If someone calls in because it's too loud, they're going to be going through town and out of town. I mean, I'm assuming that if you're not sitting right there, I guess I just hate putting things in the books that we really can't enforce them unless somebody's just sitting right there on top of it.
Here comes Chief.
I guess I've got a question.
The point was we can't even do a sign.
If we're going to
unless
look
it's
at a
going
noise ordinance, maybe we should look at something a little broader than just jailbreaks. Because you've got all these hot Challengers and Chargers and Mustangs running around town that make there's probably a lot more noise.
What kind of noise is
So
going to change?
we receive a lot of complaints on loud mufflers, and state law is clear that you cannot have an excessively loud muffler. So that we can enforce right now. The challenge is we have to observe it in order to cite it. This ordinance, I would assume, would be similar in that we would have to observe the truck in the activity in order to cite it. I am not aware of complaints on trucks downshifting and that kind of stuff making a lot of noise. So I'm not sure where this is coming from because I personally haven't gotten a complaint on it. Doesn't mean it's not going on and somebody's bothered by it. They just haven't contacted us to do that. The other noise problems that between our current noise ordinance and the state law we can address. We just have to be present while it's going on in order to cite it.
I will say that I have it's 76 coming in here at a stoplight. I don't know if it's the same one or two people that do it. And I just I'm outside a lot, as you know, if you've driven by my house and see me all the time. But I hear it almost daily on 76 coming into the stoplight, someone using their jake brake. It was not me that complained. I didn't even think about it until Andy, told us this was coming up. But yeah, it does happen, and it's pretty loud, and on a regular basis. I'm not saying that happened. I'm just saying there's a lot of things a whole lot loud. I don't know, it just feels a little... Yeah, I get it. Dilatory.
Yeah. Most of the cities that had jake brake ordinances were either cities that had large highways that went through the city, where there was a lot of trucking traffic, or they were in western North Carolina where they had steep grades on their coming down from Boone and places like that. And it looked like a lot, and I looked at some newspaper complaints about them, and it looked like people in their houses in the middle of the night would hear those trucks coming through the mountains and using their jake brakes. There's a certain amount. I mean, this isn't going to be like a money-making ordinance for the city. You aren't worried about catching people, but the signs themselves will have some deterrence. I'm not saying that everybody obeys signs, because if they did, Chief wouldn't need as many officers on the road. But there is a deterrent effect for it. And truckers, they don't like to get tickets because it goes right back to their employers.
Good information. Oh, yeah, Fred.
So, Clemson, some of you heard me say before, is an incredibly noisy town. If you just stop, even now go outside, it is just non-stop noise. So anything that reduces the likelihood, and besides, I just love to say the word jake brakes. Even the enforcement issue, because it stops a few people and the signage does that. So is there any reason not to do this from a trucker's perspective, safety perspective, any reason, because the enforcement thing, you can say about age, but other than is the hardship on the drivers, does it cause them to be less, any downside, I guess, other than the enforcement to doing this?
The jake brakes are a secondary braking system, so they have regular brakes like any other vehicle. They could still use the brakes in case of emergency, like if somebody pulled in front of them and slammed on the brakes, or if they ran over an icy patch, or some other kind of emergency. They would still have the braking system available to them. They just, under ordinary conditions, wouldn't be allowed to use it within the city. And we're talking about the main three roads, 93, 76, and 123.
Mary, does this cover, because I haven't seen the ordinance, does this cover downshifting too? Because usually that's what's making most of the noise is when they're downshifting and they're using their engine to slow the vehicle down versus using their brakes. That's when you hear the real loud, bah, 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 bah. They're downshifting.
It prohibits any release or release of compression on the engine, and that's basically what the brakes are doing.
Well, if it's muffled correctly, quite frankly, a motorcycle ride through town is louder than them downshifting and using the brake. I guess that's kind of my thing. There's a whole lot of things that occur daily that are much louder than this. Well, it's not either the world one way or the other. It's a sign. We're not going to catch them. It just seems kind of with all the other things going on.
Any other questions, comments, James?
No, this is new for me. I don't even know what the Jake break is. And so when you hear the noise, I don't know the difference between, to John's point, the information. So I agree with John earlier. If we don't have a noise ordinance, I think we should probably. I'm trying to see why we single out the Jake breaks if we're talking about the noise in general. So, but anyway, that's just me. Like I said, this is the first I've ever heard of a Jake break, so I don't know a whole lot about it.
Have y'all heard Franz Carmageddon? I mean,
So maybe I can put a little light on that. The state law regarding mufflers is very specific to the muffler and the type of noise the muffler makes, especially if the baffles are taken out. These trucks have regulation mufflers in them.
Okay.
It's the method in which they're operating the truck causing the muffler to make the loud noise. So under the state law, there's a loophole. You can't cite them under that because they have a legal muffler. And under this ordinance, it's in addition to. And that,
That's a way
am I
to
correct in
suppress
that,
it.
Mary?
I mean, they can basically drive down a hill in a high revved up gear without touching their brakes. I mean, that's what it's designed for. So it does make the noise in town, but again, I'd say it's no louder than most of a lot of vehicles in town.
yeah, there's other things that are really loud.
You don't get to leave. Sorry. Sorry. So, any other comments, questions? Thank you, Mary, for the time putting this together. Thank you, Andy, for bringing it. Unless there's any other comments, we're going to go to item C, discuss an ordinance to amend City Code Section 1827, designate parking area to include Q Street between Sloan Street and College Avenue for ride-share activity.
So we have been approached, well, the true sequencing of events was I reached out to Uber to find out if their geofencing overlay had been placed in the city of Clemson to force the rideshare users and drivers to use McHugh Lane as designated before, and learned that they had not instituted that and cited a host of reasons and blamed it on COVID. And I asked them to reinstitute that, and when I did, they came back and said, well, we don't like the fact that that's so far away from the downtown, and they showed us, we had several meetings, the mayor was included in some of those meetings, where they showed us where their hot spots were, where people were requesting rides and getting dropped off, which is all fine and dandy, but they did bring up some issues for consideration, and they like some locations that are closer to the downtown area than so far away. So one of the places that Andy and I looked at that could be a potential there is Keith Street between Sloan and College. We already have cameras there for the safety reason, and that was the whole reason why McHugh Lane was set up in the first place, as I've been informed. It's also another hub area where you have a lot of pedestrians going to and from the parking deck, etc. So I think as a way to try to accommodate their requests were a little more far-reaching than that, to say the least. But we already have that infrastructure in place. So we would have to amend the city ordinance to include that segment of roadway for that activity.
Like Chief said, I've heard a lot. I've learned a lot too. So I'm kind of a little bit more up to speed. So any questions for Chief? Andy was also part of those discussions. And we worked with Clemson University as well, talking to them, and so learned a lot about the activities, especially late night. They did a heat
Heat map.
Heat map that basically showed where a lot of the students were getting picked up, and so we tried to, like the Chief said, I would say we're not trying. We are working to try to find the best solution, but we want these sites to be used. I'll leave it at that because they're not being used right now.
Correct.
So the heat map showed most of the activity was drop-offs and pickups in the middle of the intersection by TVs over there.
That's right.
And this ordinance also only regulates this between 9 o'clock at night and 6 o'clock in the morning. So outside of those hours, they can pick up and drop off as they please. And they can pick up and drop off elsewhere in the city as they please. It doesn't It's just the downtown College Avenue area from 93 to a little past Keith is what this is intended for.
I do have one question, because I know when we looked at this the first time, that was one of my questions was, were we sure that the students or whomever would be picked up in this location? Because it was further from the downtown location, and we were, this would be because, you know, it's safer and all those good things. And I thought, well, I think it's more of an inconvenience because students don't come down that far. So now we're saying it's too far, and so now I'm going to go a little bit closer is what they're saying is, because this is not necessarily working, the first place that we had the staging area. Is that what I'm understanding?
I don't think they ever used the first staging area, and that's partly because Uber never put it into their system to block them out from picking rides up there. And you have other dynamics downtown that are about to occur. There's a hotel that's going to open in the next year, and that's going to change the dynamic down there as well. And the traffic patterns too. So we're trying to get ahead of it to identify those locations to pick up the ride share. And it's the way to get in and out of that section of roadway is a lot easier for the drivers, and they won't clog up the rest of College Avenue moving down. So this is used in other areas. I've seen it in several other cities, large cities, where they designate on the app where to go pick the ride share up or get dropped off at. And
yeah,
so,
and that's what they were going to do that first time around, was put it in the app so people would know where to go and those type of things. So it's kind of disappointing to hear that they did not put that in there the first time.
We did share that.
Yeah, so that is disappointing.
and
So I guess my question is because most of the people jumping in and out of TVs, which I can see that because it's easier in their opinions, because then they can keep going or turn a different direction and just jump out the car right there and not have to go to even the staging area. So, but if they feel this is better, I'm all for it. But I guess I'm still concerned about, because I think the other question you were raising is people may still go to different locations to get dropped off and picked up that may not be the staging location. And so did they address that?
they may, but I would argue they're going to walk the same amount of distance in those alternative locations than they would go to Keith Street. Because you would have to go up North Clemson, you'd have to go down Addison. I mean, there's not too many other areas in that section of College Avenue that you can go that you're not going to walk the same distance. And we really won't know, too, until they put that overlay in and prevent people from picking up those drivers. One of the things they brought up and they have a concern of is the drivers will ignore the app and just do what they call cash rides, which that's illegal. They can't do. That's against state law. And if they're doing that, we can address it in that realm. Something else I think is worth bringing up, I know the mayor, and he can speak to this, was contacted by some of the drivers that do ride share and some of the concerns that they have. And that was also brought up in the meetings as well, about people's safety and such.
Yeah, no, we had a meeting with some of the drivers, SMVD, and I shared that with Chief, ultimately got to Andy as well. But because obviously I'm not out at 2 o'clock. I mean, I'll be the first to admit I'm not out at 2 o'clock. If I need to be, I will. But I'm not out. But it was there were some things that were shared, but Chief is aware of it. So that's all I can really add. It's good to get the information. We're getting the information. People are feeling comfortable to share, and we're seeing what we can do. Thanks to your team, we appreciate it. I should say.
We also need to do a little bit of advertising to let the users of the ride share know these areas are being designated because there are cameras there that can see what's going on in the event that something nefarious occurs.
Comments? Any other comments, questions? Sorry. Thank you, Chief. You had double duty. Didn't know that, did you? Lindsay, you're up. Oh, Andy's up. Sorry. I saw. Oh, John gets to do it. All right, well, I'll just turn over. Yeah, I see Lindsay on here to discuss proposed changes from the Clemson Next Housing Subcommittee and the Economic Advisory Committee to revise the EDAC's mission and membership requirements. John.
Well, I guess the ladies have all the answers, but I'll lay it out there for the setup for the questions. As part of our reorganization, looking at things, this is a group that probably hadn't had its focus shifted or membership requirements in several years, and they need a retooling. I think one thing we found out is you got multiple economic groups going on, and everybody's not really always interacting on the same page. As we know, we also sometimes have challenges filling these committees. So there's a few things in here. I'll try to hit the high points, and they can tell me what I've left out. But at this point, basically, removing housing from the mission of the EDAC, because there's a commission being developed to address housing. Some things were good ideas at the time, but we're at a different point in time now. So that would have its own separate venue. Your Downtown Merchant Association remains in place. That is a separate advocacy group for a specific region. So that is not touched by this, but that was a question. You would have 9 voting members now rather than 11. And as you can see on here, your members are the president of the chamber, the business owner. That's another thing. The business owners are broken up into different regions of town now to hopefully have better representation. I shouldn't say to prevent some, but to spread it out. So your downtown, 123, 93 Patrick Square areas, 1 at-large, and 3 community members to fill that void. A couple of high points associated with that. If you'll notice in the second paragraph up there, 5 of the 9 voting members shall be residents and qualified electors of the city. So that means in addition to your 3 community members, 2 of the business owners would need to be residents or the president of the chamber. Now, from having done this 9 years, I'm going to make a suggestion right here for y'all to consider before we move this forward. Sometimes we do have difficulty getting enough residents on board. I would suggest that we put some language in here that if we post this twice within a certain period and we don't have 5 people, 3 at large plus 2 owners, that we just fill the 3 at large and that would be it until the next cycle comes around to be addressed at each time. The other thing I would suggest in this same area, as you'll notice, for the business owners, we do give preference to applicants within the municipal limits. That is to try to get it out of the goal. I'd also suggest maybe we also put in preference for diversity of business, so we don't have all clothing stores, we don't have all bars, something like that. Just a couple of suggestions as you look at these changes right through here. There was one other thing, and I think I had a question from Mary. I'll just get all my stuff out, and then they can tell me what I've left out. Mary, we have the council can remove any member. Do we need to define that as for cause or with any type of parameters around that, or can it just need to be this nebulous?
Typically, members of boards and commissions serve at the pleasure of council, just like your attorney and your judges do. So it limits. When you try to list the reasons that you can get rid of somebody, it limits you, because then you won't have the one thing you want listed.
Yeah.
So I would leave that up to the good judgment of council. It would require a majority vote anyway. So.
Okay, that was my question. Ladies, did I miss anything? Were those the high points? All right, so those are the changes. Those are a couple suggestions I had. So any feedback y'all have?
Just a couple of quick questions.
Thank Shannon and Lindsay for doing all of this and running it through the economic development group.
So I'll aim it towards you. So maybe given the change in the business model, is there room on this committee for a owner of a non-brick and mortar business? My assumption is more and more people in Clemson maybe are doing business that's not in a physical location, it's an online business. In fact, I think one of the members currently has an online business.
Yeah. So you have at-large up here. That at-large.
So it could be, but I wonder if it, just like the others, if it should be. But that was one. For the non-voting ex officio members, just please specify how they will be selected. So I assume that their home agency will select them. So Clemson will pick theirs, Tri-County, but it doesn't say that in here. Just so it's clear that their agency will.
Yeah, as selected by Clemson University or something like that.
Right, just so it's clear. And the only other thing was, I'm not sure the reasoning behind the Southern Wesleyan Pickens County School District people, they're the non-voting members, but what was thinking on those as opposed to others? Any reason why SWU and
Pickens?
But why SWU and the business, the Pickens County?
So to me, you got SWU. That's your other institute of higher education, right basically in our footprint. And I think Pickens County School District, they have a lot of programs for economic development with our community. They work closely with Pickens Alliance and provide support to some of our industry and the community. And so I think that giving them the opportunity to have a voice in our economic growth is important because they're setting the first foundation for education to the people who are either going to higher learning or to jobs from there. So that would be my reason for having them on there. Some others may have different reasoning.
I would say the same thing. Literally, that's, whenever I've been on economic, I've been on a lot of them in the past. Same premise is because of the impact of the school system within your whole community from the economic side of things. And you really, if they have somebody that has the time, that'll be the key question too. So sometimes you run into the time issue as well, but hopefully they see that this is a very important position.
But I do think it's important to keep them on next issue because this isn't going to be their primary. We want them to participate. There may be times when they're looking at the agenda saying, hey, there's nothing on here today. So, but this core group is very important, the one to get right. And I think that we really need to, we're going to have to focus on it. There's going to be decisions to make. It's going to be different than what we have done in the past. You had a lot of overlap in certain areas of town in the past that would change, and the residents thing as well.
I was just going to say that all those recommendations, I know it's discussion at this time, but I would totally support. I just don't know, Beverly, you run it twice. I don't know if we've run into that before.
Like re-advertise, repost.
If you repost it, have we done that with any other committees in the past?
We have in the past, but there's just so many members on that, and there's been a couple of times we ran it, a couple of times and still wanted to.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what my concern is with the residents.
That's a good solution. If you run it twice, you can. Okay.
So, we're still going to drive those 3 community members. That's just for the business owner section.
Thank you. Any other comments, discussion? Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Andy, Shannon, Lindsay, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
All right, we'll go into item E, staff reports. Andy, you're on again.
All right, 2 things for you. The first one is we have to pick a date for your annual health insurance meeting. We're going to have a full-fledged workshop this time. I think we can do it in about an hour, so we'll have to look at a lunchtime if we could. We'll have our broker come and go through the entire program with you and explain how it all works. And give you an idea of how we look compared to being self-insured versus on the traditional system as well. They are available anytime between the 3rd and the 8th. So I'm checking to see with y'all what date. November.
That's
quick.
Because we need to do open enrollment in December.
It's like starting Wednesday.
So we're
I can do the 8th work. That's like next Monday.
I'm out of town, but 8th, 9th, and 10th.
Yeah, I won't be.
So I have to be here.
I won't be around for 8 too.
That's the day that everybody
You do the 3rd.
fill me in.
I can tell.
I mean, I like a good insurance meeting.
Could you do Friday at noon? Buy you lunch?
I'm about 50-50. I'm about 50-50, but I don't know more about
I can't be in front of it. That doesn't mean I have to be here.
No,
If you want to, and the 8th is out. 2,
8th, 9th, and 10th.
8th, 9th, and 10th. You're just eliminating all of them.
Well, if we have to go through the 12, I'm sure
Like I
we can
said,
go back and see it.
let's compete that.
What about the 4th? Did we say the 4th is on?
Yeah. What about that? Let's go.
But I don't need, again, y'all can, Andy can catch me up afterwards.
How about-
On that short notice, it may be a hard time getting there by the
Yeah.
on that short of a time.
Let's go back to the 4th. If we can get at least 5, since I know they gave you those dates, Andy, so you don't have to go back and forth. Afternoon, okay, on the 4th?
Because he's on lunch. If it's afternoon, I can't do that.
I hate to be the one to say no, but I'm tied up
Okay.
in 2.
No, that's
I can be there until 3.
okay.
Or till 3.
But you got too many no's. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
So what, you talking about in the afternoon?
4th. You could.
Yeah, I couldn't do lunch.
I could do until 2.
I can only do till 1:30.
You can do it till 2. You can't do lunch.
I can't do lunch. I probably can't do lunch.
Yeah.
I could probably do it too.
What about Friday morning?
You say Friday morning. I can't do Friday
Okay.
morning.
All right. Andy, you want to try for the latter part of next week?
Well, let's hear from y'all to see what the 11th and 12th.
11th or 12th. You're coming back 11th or 12th, right? All right, so 11th or 12th. 11th is Veterans Day, so the 12th. 12th is the best. Okay, we're getting there. 12th.
It depends on what time.
Okay, let's do.
I'll just tell you, I don't have any time until after 3.
Till after 3. Oh, okay, to end the weekend at 3 o'clock.
So, but if we
Or
go
start
without,
the weekend, I should say, not end it.
you can go without.
I can't, I just like the one afternoon, I can't do it.
Okay, we're struggling here. Normally we get, at least we get a consensus.
I can do up to 10.
I normally don't
Up to
ask,
10?
could we do it online?
We can have the option of like what we did today.
There's
If you,
some pretty serious handouts and things that would be pretty hard to do. You're going to get a book. We're going to bring you a workbook.
Okay.
let's go back to the 12th.
For our council meeting.
Let's go back either the 12th or the 15th, I was going to say. Morning, possibly the 12th. No?
You can do the 15th, probably prior to your council meeting.
Can we do the 15th?
We know we're going to be here for that. You said it's only going to take an hour.
So let's do 5 o'clock on the 15th.
Okay.
Is that too late for me, you think?
No, I think that'll work. Fine.
Okay. So there we go. Thank you, John.
That's easy.
5 o'clock. Did you read it down?
And the other thing is, we need to set a time in December for you to have a fund balance and budget planning meeting. We start things a little earlier this year. So we're looking at December 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, or the 6th, 7th, and 9th. And we're going to need you for about 2 hours that day.
That far out, I'm good so far.
All right, so I'm going to just go straight in on a Thursday, 2nd. How's everybody look?
What time?
Name it.
11 o'clock, we're staying over lunch.
There we go. Everybody good?
Works.
All right. 11 o'clock. That one was easy.
You say 2 hours?
11 o'clock on the 2nd. 11 to 2.
That's all I got for you.
Beverly, and you got something. Is that number? Yep.
But Mayor is on that committee, and I think more and more volunteers on the council will just read their submissions and the among choose their secret I'll collect those. If John gets some of this going to me, or I can send an email to Sally and send them. Most of them come to me anyway. They don't send. Chelsea was on that committee, and she rotated on.
I would encourage you to participate. It really was rewarding you. It's a tough decision. You read a lot of things. You learn a lot about some different folks. And if you haven't done it, and none of you have, I would recommend you what you have.
Absolutely.
She already said you. So
Yeah, okay.
I'll do it.
So, is anybody else? And I can, if somebody really, if you need me, step away too. But I enjoy doing it. So, yeah, John said it very well. So we got Bob and is that good for everybody? Okay. All right. So there you go. Thank you, Beverly. All right, we're moving along here. Policy action agenda, public comments, please dial 653-9886. 2-minute limit. 2-minute limit per speaker. Again, 653-9886. The first is on A, consider second reading of ordinance to amend City Code Section 937, sanitation garbage trash collection, to affirm and clarify that the residential sanitation fee is a mandatory uniform service charge with no opt-out and is used to cover costs associated with management of residential solid waste services, including collection, processing, recycling materials, collection, transport, and handling, and landfilling of residential solid waste. Heather's here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I really don't have anything to add to it.
Questions, comments for Heather? If not, would somebody like to make a motion?
Consider second reading of an ordinance to amend City Code 9-37 as presented.
Second.
Any further comments, questions, discussion? If not, all in favor, raise your right hand. All right. It's unanimous. Thank you for being here, Heather.
All right, thanks.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. All right, next, Chief, you're back. You should just stand up here, Chief. Just kidding. No, we're trying to get you so that you can, yeah. We're moving along here. Consider second reading of ordinance prohibiting open carry of firearms during permitted organized events on public property in accordance with South Carolina Code 2331-520 and prohibiting the possession of concealable weapons by any persons while on city premises or city workplaces, occupying machinery, vehicle, or equipment owned or operated by the city. Do you want to add anything? I know we've had plenty of discussion, which is good. Robust. All right. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I make a motion, we consider the second reading of ordinance prohibiting open carry of firearms at public events.
Second.
Further comment, discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Any opposed? Well, we don't need to. Thank you again. Thank you again, Chief. I think that's the last time. I think. I have to look. So. Next is we always have item C on here to continue any discussion on consider repealing or amending the ordinance requiring face coverings, masks, and indoor locations of schools, preschools, or kindergartens or daycare within the city limits. I'll kind of take over for you, Andy, in this. I mean, unless you've heard anything at this time.
We still have an effect.
And I know that we have received a couple emails clarifying, and I appreciate Rick and Lowell putting on the updated and Mary updated the ordinance from our last city council meeting. So I know that's online. Any comments? All right. If not, emotions, we will move to our next item. Last chance. Okay. Resolution. We're considering a resolution to designate 15-minute on-street parking spaces in downtown business district. Lindsay, you do have to come up this time.
So, I presented this for a discussion item 2 weeks ago, and we discussed it, and so now it is on the agenda as a resolution. Nothing's changed from the suggestion of strategically placed spaces. The attachment had a map on it that had all of them in a central location, and it also had the map with them separated. The Economic Development Advisory Committee met last week. They did not have a quorum, so they weren't able to make a formal recommendation to council, but the discussion during the meeting was that they, from the downtown merchants to the Economic Development Committee, feel that the strategically placed spaces, that's the route to go. Other than that, I don't know.
It's a resolution. Go ahead.
You want to speak?
I like this idea. So we're trying. That's the thing to understand. This is something we're working through to see if it works. I like the idea of a space to park. My only question is on the Earl Street. It seems to me it would make more sense to have 3 on the low end and 2 on the high end, just because that opens up more people on to College Avenue, and it's only a 30-second walk up to the businesses at the top of Earl. And you also had the parking deck down there doing the thing there. Just again, I wouldn't lose any sleep either way. It just seems more logical to have 3 on the bottom and 2 on the top for that. Anyway, I support giving us a whirl. I like looking at ideas that we're all talking about painting it on the parking spots, signs, and as we evolve with the rest of our potential for metered parking downtown, we can tweak this, do away, potentially consolidate, whatever it may be. But we got to start somewhere. So I think it's a good point.
My only question, or whatever, is the enforcement. The young lady that's going around right now, I mean, how difficult it's going to be for her to think that's a 15-minute event. She walks by, she's not going to be coming back 15 more, she'll be coming back later.
As my good friend Dr. McGuire says, we can't base everything on enforcement. We cannot enforce everything 100%, but at least it gives us an opportunity.
I just was going to bring that up.
It's the start.
She
I-
might,
I-
There will be conversations there after this.
she might be able to determine which spaces have been occupied for more than 50 minutes from the car horns honking behind them.
Well, I mean, I think the other thing about it is she comes back an hour later, the car's still there, we definitely got a violation.
That's true. That's true.
Just a different question. Is there any problem with spaces for people with disabilities? Are those filling? Do we need to have a spot like this for someone with a disability? Has it not been an issue in terms of special parking spaces?
It's funny you should ask that because I am actually having an issue with in the parking deck, the Keith Street parking deck, the third level, the walkway over to the Wincott building. There is only one handicap space on that level. We have multiple on the first, and the deck itself meets all requirements for handicap parking. If the elevator is in operation 100% of the time, then we don't have any issues. But when the elevator goes down, the only access to the Wincott building, the upper offices, for someone who's handicapped, mobile handicap, is that space on the third floor to get up, to be able to get out of their car and walk across. Because if you're on the first floor, you've got to cross Keith Street, you've got the curb, you've got the stairs to go down, and that handicap space is occupied Monday through Friday now. And so I have gotten some calls about what can we do about that. As for College Avenue and that access down there, we don't have any issue. I've never had any complaints or any issues about that.
So it wouldn't really be necessary that one of these spaces be designated for people with disabilities. There's enough parking, short-term or long-term, without one of these spaces being a dedicated.
Yes.
Yeah. How will people know about this space location of the spaces?
There's signage that will be installed in front of them,
So to
and
be
we're going to
directed-
physically paint the asphalt to say it's a 15-minute open public space.
I like the idea. I think we need to have 15-minute spaces. Once we put them decentralized like this, we're never getting them back. Once we do this, and this is a perfect example of people arguing in their own selfish best interest for something that would be very reasonable and logical to have located in one place where we could have signage on the road that directs everyone to one location where you have 8 or 10 of these together. Again, the way our downtown is situated, once you pass them, if they're not empty, you're going to have to go a long way to turn around. Whereas if we kept them in the original design, you go to that one space, there's a way to loop through there and come back and see if they're open. And again, and from an enforcement perspective, way, way, way easier and more likely to be able to be enforced, and still a 2-minute or less walk from anywhere that someone would be going to pick up food from where they were originally proposed. And because, like I said, I think we need these somewhere, but the way that we're doing it, we'll never get it back. It's not going to work for as many people having them decentralized as it would if we had them centralized. And for that reason, I'm voting no for this for that reason alone. Not because I don't think we need them. I think we need to take a second, take a deep breath, and think reasonably and logically about the physical layout of our downtown and how it looks and how it works and how it doesn't work. And this is one of those things that, it'll be okay, but it would work better and I think be significantly better to think about it differently than what we're doing.
So actually, that's a good point. I like that. How many spaces are we setting aside with the plan that you took us?
10 spaces.
Could we, since this is experimental, could we make 5 of those in a centralized spot just to see what happens and get a sense of the difficulty of negotiating with them, moving them, the ease of enforcement? Just since it is experimental, right? I mean, we could.
Basically, 5 along Earl Street are almost essentially handled.
If you have the 3 and the 2 right there,
Yeah.
you're almost putting them as centralized as is. Let's go back to, I mean, I was not in the meetings, and I'm gonna look at the 2 of you on what was said at the Economic Development Advisory Committee meetings about what their thoughts are about spacing these out.
They did not have a quorum, so I cannot speak for the
Right.
quorum, but those that were present felt very, very strongly that they needed to be in strategic locations, so much so that if you're going to centralize them, then they don't want to do it. That's how strongly they felt about it.
You could
Yeah,
set
but
a.
was there a why attached to that? Why they think that the decentralized is better? I mean, there's got to be.
It's about spreading it out and spreading out.
Other than I want it in
convenience
front of my place or closer to my
sharing
business.
sharing the benefit of a free 15-minute space, and
It's less to walk from Earl Street, or is that the street that we're on? Yeah. Less to walk from Earl Street to anywhere in downtown than it is from the middle of the Publix parking lot to the meat section in the back. It's not a lot to ask. We are not a giant downtown. This is not, this decentralization, if we were in downtown Greenville, I get it. We are not downtown Greenville. We're not even close. And again, just from a design, layout, and operational standpoint for the user, it makes way more sense to have them centralized. Go here, these are where the 15-minute spaces are. No, by the way, when you drive up the hill, if you don't get one, guess what? The Earl Street parking lot that's right there that makes it a 3-minute walk, there's always a space open there that you can get, and we can get people using those. Or come back around and look at the parking deck. Otherwise, you're driving through campus. You're going back through a neighborhood. When you go to look for these specific decentralized spots in a downtown that is not set up for flow-through, wrap-around traffic.
6 of these are pretty much on a pretty easy flow. 4 of them would not be. 6 of them you can pretty well circle around and around and around, and go by the Lutheran Church, and at Finley Earl, and at the Heat Street Garage. The ones over on College are the only ones you can't just continuously loop around.
So I would think as a user, I would prefer the centralized location because it would save me from driving, looking anywhere. I would know immediately whether there's a space or not, in the sense that if those 6 were filled, I wouldn't continue searching for those. I can see if they're spread out, that basically I'm gonna do hunting. For me personally, would be more frustrated by that than knowing what's on. But on the other hand, it's such a small area, how long that would take. But I guess I envision a line of cars at 8 o'clock on 7:45 on campus parking, and people just seeking this space. So I can see both sides of this, but I think as a user, it'd be easier to be centralized because I wouldn't have to search. I would know immediately if there's a spot. Why do they think nothing is better than this? I'm not quite clear on that nothing is better than centralized.
because there are businesses up and down College Avenue, and there are businesses on Earl, and there are businesses on North Clemson, and even on Sloan, even though we didn't begin to address Sloan, that want a space central to their business where their clients, their customers, their patrons can pull in, grab what they need, and go. It became an issue when we had the spaces during COVID, and it was only for restaurants, and so there's other businesses downtown that felt like it was unfair that the restaurants had spaces right in front of their business. We were using public spaces right in front of their business, and that wealth was not shared. So you just take it back to wherever you put 10 spaces, if you centrally locate 10 spaces, whatever businesses those spaces are in front of, the other businesses in the downtown district are going to feel like that's an unfair advantage for those businesses right there. I'm speaking on behalf of them. They might have a different, but I know what the conversation was like. And there are some businesses that were extremely displeased.
I think if you cut the other way as well, if you put them all in one centralized area, so the logical place would probably be up Earl Street right there. But then there's a lot of people that, you know, I spend a lot of time parking there, so you might know somebody that, hey, you just taking the 15-minute parking, and it's all being used there, but this is where I go and park for an hour and a half while I go downtown and eat lunch and all that, and you push me out. So,
Yeah, that's what worries me about Earl, because those places there by Variety and Frame, I mean, they're high use properties. I mean, to me, why wouldn't you put them right there on Sloan? You know, you could put them right there and it's equal distance. But the other thing that worries me,
interesting street because Sloan is interesting because in the public parking on Sloan, there are private spaces in there that have come with long standing.
I didn't know that.
So it's just better to just leave Sloan.
There's only one. There's one of them.
And I guess my one argument is, are you going to listen to your downtown merchants and what they would like, or are you going to do what you think, like, where does the line come in the decision making on it? I know that some of you feel that the central spaces make more sense, and I'm not saying that they don't make more sense. I'm not taking a stance on it, but you've got people who live, work, breathe downtown, your downtown businesses, asking for it to be a certain way. And you're talking about doing it a different way.
I think the concern came up from enforcement.
And I know enforcement.
Because one person scattered here, there, it just makes it harder, and then the businesses are going to say, well,
Why aren't you coming?
You can't always stay on top of it.
the only thing I guess I was going to say is about the 15-minute ones that are parallel parking places. I mean, it's hard enough to get in and out of them it is, but that's fine.
If we had angle parking, I'd be way more comfortable with it. And the argument from the businesses that aren't restaurants during COVID is not a fair argument in that their business model did not completely change and get almost completely shut down and have to pivot to something else. So that's not a fair argument for the other businesses. Every business in town would say, yeah, I want a couple of 15-minute parking spots in front of my place. And they're not going to be specific to one business. So to think that, you know, someone's going to be in those spots all the time, and those businesses are then going to just be, you know, same thing, you know, like, well, come, chief, someone's been in there 17 minutes, and I've got a client that needs to get in there. Come, you know, do the thing. So they're going to feel like they own the spot, and that's not a great situation for us to be in.
Lindsay, could you, if council decides to do this as a pilot project, with reports each month from you and the chief on all the issues, whether it was being full all the time or whether there was enforcement or even whether people were using them, would you still have the opportunity to add a permanent or a centralized location and really do both if it was something that was popular? Or would this be too many spaces?
I would think that we wouldn't want to expand beyond 20 spaces. Wherever those spaces end up being, there's only 20 spaces on College Avenue between Earl and 93. So, you know, you think about that. There's really not.
I thought somebody mentioned putting them on Earl, though.
I'm saying, like, if you're on College Avenue, Earl and College Avenue to 93, there's only 20 spaces.
On College, though.
On College,
right.
Yes. Yeah. The majority of the parking is up above Keith and in your side streets on street parking.
Okay. I try to listen. I think two things, because this was actually an initiative or a proposal that was brought to us by the downtown business. So because of that, I think what I would like to see is that we should consider their thoughts, because it is a world that they live in, that we're considering their proposal. Now, pre-COVID, didn't think about this, because during COVID, it seemed to work, that we had the different spaces where people could go and pick up, park there for a short period of time, and it was spaced out, correct? We didn't have a central location.
No, it was.
So it was spaced out. So all we're doing is something very similar. It's just that we're saying that it's for anyone.
It's a more equitable
It's more
distribution
equitable
of
distribution of
spaces.
spaces. And so, because that was brought to us versus us trying to make that decision, I think for the time being, since it's proposed and it's a pilot, I think we should allow and hear what our merchants are asking of us and give them that benefit of the doubt, even though we may feel like centralization is better, but I think John said it, but then we got customers who feel like if you make it central and you have all these spaces that are 15 minutes, it's going to impede and impact those folks who are used to being able to park and say, why are we turn all this into 15-minute space? So you don't get that other kind of concern. So I think if you spread it out, you have a few spaces here, a few spaces there, spread it out, you'll have that equal, what I call that balance. So it does not impact all of us. But because the merchants are the ones who, in economic development, the group, they brought to our attention, I think for me, that's the most important piece. And so I think we should at least go ahead and make that decision to see if it works. Then if it doesn't seem to work, come back and reevaluate.
So I think everybody has had a chance. I'll give it just a couple more minutes if you have something different. So,
So, first, the reason it worked during COVID, all those signs had businesses on them. They were specific, like it was pick up for your pie, pick up for Sully Stevens. We made it so that the businesses owned the spots. So
Totally
it was easier
unenforceable.
What's that?
It's totally unenforceable.
I know it's totally unenforceable, but from a psychology perspective, it wasn't just a free-for-all, like, hey, you can go here, and I could park in front of Sully Steamers and walk up the street. I didn't ever do that. I didn't think that I could because of the way the signage was. Second, what I was going to propose is let's do it as an experiment. You know, if we're really serious about, because as soon as we put it there, you're not taking it back. I would be more apt to say, let's do it. Let's try it decentralized for a little while. Let's try it centralized for a little while. And let's see what works better. Let's see if there's issues that come up from an enforcement standpoint, from a usability standpoint. Because at the end of the day, I do care about what the businesses want. I think this is good for them. But guess what? The other side of the coin is this is for the customers and the citizens that use those businesses as much as it is for the businesses. And from a usability standpoint, for the users of those, I think, that personally, I think the centralized makes more sense.
Got one question. Does this have hours on it? So is it only like in place from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. or something like that, and then after?
That has not been addressed yet. I would assume that it's got to end at 5 because
It's got to be what?
it would end at 5. It would be 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
So in other words,
But
okay,
it
so
does
like,
nothing for picking up food, right? Because how many people, I'm a senior citizen and I eat before 5 I ate a little bit tonight before 5
don't
in this
eat
meeting. But why, if it's for picking up food and things from businesses, ending it at
I would
5
think
makes no
7
sense.
o'clock. I would think like 8 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Yeah, 7 or even 8.
Well, I'm not going to speak for the chief. He is going to come back up here now.
I told
Did you not say that if they extended it past 5 p.m. that the patrol in that area could keep an eye on the spaces? Was that my conversation we had?
It's going to be dependent on our calls for service as to whether we can respond to those. And so that's why a lot of the parking regulations now is because the parking enforcement officer works till 5. And once the parking enforcement officer goes home, we can enforce parking, but it's all dependent on how busy we are. That's a very low priority issue. And just in these meetings, I'll point out, enforcement keeps coming up. I let the business owners know, don't expect us to be there on the 17th minute taking the car, because there are a lot of other things that we have to take care of. The parking enforcement officer may get called to the parking deck because someone's parked in a reserved spot and they have to tow the vehicle and may be out of pocket for an hour. Somebody could potentially be in a 15-minute spot for an hour until we were able to get over there and take care of that. So they're aware that we have some enforcement issues. We have some solutions potentially in the works on staffing to address part of that, but they still know that, come minute 17, minute 18, minute 19, you can make the call, we'll take it, but it'll get prioritized based on what we're doing at that particular moment in time.
all right. Unless you got something different to say.
I just quickly. So first of all, As always, Councilmember Alicia brings up excellent points. I would ask, to the extent possible, though, that as part of the evaluation of this, to the extent that store owners can see the parking spaces in front of their shop, if you could give us at least some indication of how successful this is. I mean, my guess is it's going to be fortuitous parking, and people are going to park in that space even if they're not going to John's store. And it probably won't do what they expect it to do, because those spaces will fill, particularly because downtown is so small. I could walk anywhere within a matter of minutes. But
the first one I see.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying too. But I think it would be helpful, informally, casually, understand that if they could just give us a sense that it seems to be working, because I noticed 5 cars that park there that walk into my building or whatever. Not formal, not forcing them. At least a casual notion. I really do think it's going to be more, like you just said, I'm taking the first empty space, even if it's not in front of that store, because it's still only a 100-yard walk. But if they can give us some sort of...
So the Downtown Merchant Association, the advocacy group that meets, and they have very good discussion, robust discussion, engagement. They will be more than happy to share that information. And they're not, I mean, they're going to see it every day.
Yeah,
And so,
straight up, not,
there you go.
Not bending the data either way, but just honestly coming in and saying,
I agree.
it really improved my store that this is in front of me, versus it improved my business even though it was 20 yards away, because it was still easier than parking. So just a sense.
So
Just a sense.
would somebody like to consider making a motion for a resolution?
Yes, I will make a motion to approve a resolution designating 15-minute on-street parking spaces in downtown business districts in a decentralized manner. And I would recommend, as part of that we look at reversing the ones on Earl Street, the 3 and the 2 in there. And then just conversation, basically everything Fran and Lisa said, we would look at, this really in part of motion, it's just an additional commentary that we will be revisiting this. Anyway. No, I said this isn't part of the motion, this is just my additional commentary.
Sorry, Beverly, it was not.
The motion is decentralized downtown 15-minute parking with a consideration to reverse the Earl Street 3 and 2 number.
Just a consideration, or do you want to make it part of your motion?
I would like to make it permanent,
Well,
but
to make it part of your motion.
Okay,
sure. I'll make
somebody
it part
like
of the
to
motion.
second that? Second it. Okay, John, thank you. All right, further discussion.
I want to make a motion that we make it extremely, to add something to it, that we make it extremely clear that this is not a permanent solution, and that we will evaluate this after 90 days and not go out and paint parking spaces immediately and those kind of things, because as soon as we do it, we're never putting that genie back in the bottle. If this is one of those things that it's going to make people more upset than it might do a problem. It just has that potential.
So let me make sure, so no painting of the parking spot, but the posted signs that could be used if it was centralized. So those could be reused.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So then we're thinking,
Yeah. So
you notice what I'm thinking, dollar-wise, I want to make sure we maximize what we're spending, don't waste any money. So
motion to evaluate it after 90 days to determine.
Is 90 days enough?
Maybe, let's say 6 months.
6 months. Let's say
There's no parking
okay.
here.
Sorry to change it.
No, that's great.
Okay.
We're lifting park regulations anyway from December 1st to January 9th, right? So those 30 days.
Do I have a second on his amended?
I want to make sure I understand the motion. I mean,
Okay.
is the painting part of the motion? Like, to me, I think stupid painting is cheap and easy to paint over things, because you need to create visibility to accurately assess.
Yeah, didn't
what
take
people
that
are
out.
saying.
So just to evaluate.
So your motion is to
temporary-
evaluate the program after 6 months.
That we will, we'll
Second
evaluate
that.
it.
Why don't you say 6 months from complete installation?
Yeah,
Yes.
from installation.
All right. Thank you. All right. Any further discussion on that? All in favor of the amended motion, Bob's amended motion, raise your right hand. All right. Unanimous after all that. Wow. Thank you, Lindsay.
Can't stand bad design.
All right. We're moving on. Sorry. Good discussion. All right. Other policy items. Consider a purchase of a historical marker at the Little John Community Center for what is formerly known as Little John Grill. I know we talked about this last week with Vince Jackson. Andy, did you want to add anything else?
They got a waiver to get a big sign. I normally wouldn't be eligible for that, and it's just a couple $100 more.
Okay.
So we're looking at about $2,500 of a hospitality tax.
Fine, big, what's the difference?
Yeah, you said big fun.
little sign.
The little ones
Billboard, or
are,
we
no,
talking-
the
No,
little
no,
one,
no, no, it's not gonna be this, it's
Yeah.
gonna be more like a
gonna be
3 foot.
it's gonna be the big one, yeah.
The bigger one.
Those big, still in the same keeping with what we normally see on the side of the road.
Right.
And we've already checked to see when it's gonna come in, and it will be part of the sesquicentennial celebration.
Further comments, questions? If not, would somebody like to make a recommendation for the purchase?
I make a motion, we purchase a historical marker at Little John Community Center.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All right, thank you very much. We're there. We have our Clemson area chamber president here. Sorry for your delay.
Seriously.
I'm going to let you just take over on what you're here to talk about waiving. So there you go.
All right, good evening, Merritt Rechachar with the Clemson Area Chamber. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. The Clemson Area Chamber of Commerce is requesting the city waive parking regulations in downtown Clemson from December 1, 2021 to January 10, 2022 to encourage shopping during the holiday season. The waiver would allow for free metered parking in the Keith Street and Earl Street parking decks, and the waiver would also extend the time limit on 1 hour parking spaces to 2 hours.
All right, we've done this for many years. Any further discussion, comments? I shouldn't say any further. Any discussion, questions?
Can we enforce it?
I was scared to say parking.
What's it gonna do to 15 minutes, spots?
I know.
On that note, would somebody like to make a motion?
I move that we approve the request from the Clemson Area Chamber of Commerce and waive parking regulations in downtown Clemson starting December 1st and ending January 9th, 2022.
Second.
All right.
January 10th. Yes.
10.
It says January 9th,
January 10th, okay.
2022. All right, any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Any opposed? No, there's none. Okay.
Thank you.
How about you? I'm going to give you this resolution, the proclamation. So that way, the small business, because you were very actively involved in this as well. So thank you. Thank you. All right, Mayor, Council reports, comments, new business. I get to start just by telling you that we have a famous individual up here on City Council that was just nominated and the recipient, but they haven't even had the event yet. But the GSA Business Report has Alicia Smith as a 2021 GSA Women of Influence that will recognize her on December 9th, Thursday, at the Commerce Club. And Andy and I are lucky enough to go. And I look at it as we'll make sure we take plenty of pictures for everybody. But a great recognition. This is all throughout the upstate. There were 25 award recipients, I would say, and congratulations. We just wanted to share that.
Congratulations.
Completely surprised, so thank you for that, and thank you for the nomination. Appreciate that, so I'm glad you all did. Well deserved. So, thank you.
Other comments? Yes.
Just a couple of quick things. So since the fourth Thursday of November, I think, is Thanksgiving, and December is probably Christmas or thereabouts, I think probably want to, we'll wait on the conversation with council until the January date. Rather than change the date, I like the idea of consistent being on the 4th. I think the meeting last week, again, was really good. The attendance was not great, but I think the input was good. John, Bob, myself, Andy, and Matt Colbert from the police department was there. He was excellent. He really was. He was superb. A lot of conversation about noise, downtown traffic. I think Andy's working on the report card now. I left there thinking, I think it was 6 people, but the ideas that were generated will help lots of other people. I don't know about John and Bob's reception. I think it was really good. Thanks to University of Lisbon for having us there, and Andy also. I like the idea of the way this is working. If you have an idea for a February or January meeting place, we can get with that. I think the rain Thursday night changes on the 10th. By the way, if there's somewhere you think, and again, even if it's in a location, it's still open to everybody. But if we find a different neighborhood, it might also help surge in attendance and involvement. But thank you for doing that. And that was spectacular too, for what it was.
Thank you, Fran, for leading this up, as well as Andy and everyone else continuing to follow up on the items too. That's been awesome. I'll go ahead and sign me up for January. I know we've been rotating. Okay. council, so whoever else wants to.
I can do that.
So you already have two free.
I thought every.
You actually don't have to rotate anymore. So
Yeah,
that's
that's
just-
Yeah, we
that's
can always
nice.
see it.
The business will be taking
Okay.
place.
Okay.
You show up.
We'll just show up the ones. There we go. Thank you.
But it helps to advertise, so people can sort of put your service and else.
Yes, Andy and I met this week, and I told him I would share one of the council reports. We were wanting to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion training, and one of the discussions we discussed, and he and I agreed, so we wanted to bring it to council's attention, and so at some point we'll have to have further discussion, so I'm glad we got our December meeting scheduled, because one of the things we talked about is having an FTE that's designated for diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. You know, Fran has always said that we want somebody who's always thinking about these things, that get up and this is always on their mind. And it helps to be able to do that, because we've heard in several conversations, even with some of the organizations that, you know, you all have been part of, that who thinks about these issues, what, you know, constantly reminding, maybe doing some oversight and programming and coordination. We've had, you know, several members of our community that talked about, where am I in this process? You know, I don't see our, you know, myself in it. So I think that's going to be important. So that's one area we talked about. And then establishing a commission. So that commission would actually focus and provide guidance and do similar to our other commissions that we have established. And this FTE would be responsible in working and administering that organization, that group. So that's another area that we talked about. And then finally, in terms of training, and our goal is hopefully early part of January, no later than February, is to do some basic training on understanding what is DEI. You know, what does diversity mean? What does equity mean? What does it mean to be inclusive? So just the foundation to start that discussion as we go through this process, because we want to make sure that our members on our staff, our city, our employees understand this is what we're talking about, because you hear these concepts all the time, but you really totally understand what that means. And so that would be the type of training we would start off with. And then, of course, if approved, moving forward with hiring someone who would actually take it a step further and start doing more of the training and more work with that, because it's something that you want to continue. It's not just the one and done. So that was what we talked about. So I was really appreciative of his foresight and his thought process. And so I told him I wanted to share that with the council. Did I miss anything in?
That's good. Thank you for sharing that. Anything? All right. Well, the next item is with a motion, we'll go into executive session possibly to discuss the recommendation for assistant city administrator.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All right.